I just have a couple opening remarks before we introduce our honored guests with us. But I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize two individuals before we get started. This program today, and really this experience that started last year in the spring, then carried over into the summer, and now culminating with today's assembly program for our juniors and seniors, our freshmen and our sophomores later this afternoon, and then tonight at Morris Knowles High School for the school-wide community, and then tomorrow for the Knowles student body, really has been the hard work and dedication of Mrs. Erin Morgan, who is the District Director of Instructional Services for English, and Mr. Jason Collinsworth, who is an English teacher over at Morris Knowles. I would ask that the two of them please stand and be recognized. Their hard work this last spring, this past summer, and this fall has really enabled the district to continue with the tradition of having a summer read program and bringing our honored guests. So on behalf of Morris Knowles High School, I want to thank both of you. So several years ago, the Morris Knowles Regional School District embraced the concept of a summer read. The new experience, however, came with a rather unique twist. Rather than assigning a different book to each grade level and formulating a culminating assignment for each grade level, a common practice in many local high schools across the country and state, our district had a different vision. It called for a common district-wide experience, a common read for all grades 9 through 12, resulting not in a meaningless assignment, but rather with an in-person school visitation by the author of the selected book, coming to both high schools, speaking to students about the message as revealed in the work itself. The book selections in these last several years speak to the enduring principles of life through such themes as resilience, relationships, hope, survival, and the human spirit. Our goal transcends any storyline. Instead, our goal is to raise the bar with respect to the true understanding for a better, richer life. When I became the principal in 2014, I decided to utilize the salient message of the summer read by embracing it as a school-wide theme for the year. Hopefully, the link serves to not only spotlight the reading experience itself, but in addition, focus the spirit of the read by incorporating its core values into our belief system as a high school. This year, instead of one book selection, our district offered 6 choices, all focusing on a period in history we know as the Holocaust. As you know from your readings and from your classroom study, the Holocaust represents a time in history when the very fabric of the human life comes into question, when basic moral issues become center stage, and when man's responsibility to man, or lack thereof, presents like no other time in the history of the world. It may forever be seen as the darkest hour of the 20th century, but at the same time, due to the resilience and courage of so many, a time to celebrate the human spirit in all of its splendor and wonder. Today, Morris Knowles High School embraces as a school-wide theme, united in the embrace of the human spirit as a result of the Holocaust itself. Here to give us greater insight and understanding into this incredibly complex time, we are privileged to welcome guests from the Holocaust Council of Metro West, bringing us Survivor Speak. They are the true eyewitnesses, and they are here to share the story that we must never forget, must never trivialize, and must never, ever allow to repeat itself. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor now to turn the microphone to our esteemed guests as they present to the student body of Morris Knowles High School, Survivor Speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that really very kind and important introduction, and for instilling those values into your school and into your community. And it is really, I think, the three of us are very overwhelmed by that introduction and what you are teaching to your students. My name is Robin Sisler, and along with my friends Ed Bindell and Olga Menser, we represent the Holocaust Council of Greater Metro West. And I thank you so much for inviting us here today and for letting us be a part of your summer reading experience. And I have the stack of books before me that you, as a student body, have been asked to read. And we're so happy that we are here this morning to further educate you about this period in human history. So this morning we're going to be talking about the Holocaust, which by definition means death by fire. And it was a period that lasted for 12 years, from 1933, when Adolf Hitler assumed power in Germany, until 1945, when the Germans surrendered to the Allied forces, which included, for this for all juniors and seniors, the Americans. For those 12 years, Germany waged two wars. One for control of land to dominate Europe and into Central Africa, and the second war was against those people that the Nazis deemed inferior in many ways. He wanted to create a perfect Aryan race and cleanse the world of all that he deemed unfit, unworthy of life. Upwards of 75 million people were killed during World War II. It's a startling number. 11 million of those were innocent victims, based only on being a different race, a different religion, a different belief system. Today we're going to be specifically talking about the 6 million Jews that were killed as part of the Holocaust. And while all of the people that perished in the Holocaust were important, today we're going to be talking specifically more about the Jewish experience, because those of you that read Elie Wiesel's book, Night, Elie Wiesel, and we as a world are saddened by his death this summer. But Elie Wiesel said, while not all victims were Jews, all Jews were victims. And the Jewish people as a people were specifically targeted for complete and total annihilation. And so we specifically are talking about those 6 million people because of the desire for their complete and total annihilation. When you think about the number 6 million, it's a number that is unimaginable. Picture 6 million of something. You can't. You can't. But when you think that each one of those 6 million people was somebody, there were doctors and lawyers and teachers, farmers, moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, cousins and brothers, and aunts and uncles and friends. Each one of those 6 million people had a story to tell, had a life to live, a desire to go on. And so the tragedy of the Holocaust is one person's story times 6 million. Our purpose here today is to educate you about the Holocaust so that you can remember, learn from the past, and be proactive in never allowing a Holocaust to happen to anyone, anywhere, ever again. And Ed and Olga are going to share their personal stories of what they experienced during this horrific time. I'm going to let Ed hold the microphone for a second, just 1 second. And I'm going to use this one. And as is Jewish tradition, when we're talking about and acknowledging the death of somebody, we light a yurtzeit candle. So we're going to light this yurtzeit candle to honor those that perished, but also to honor people like Ed and Olga, who continue to tell the story of their life. And they're talking about the worst days, the worst moments, the worst years of their life. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's not easy to stand up in front of this very large audience of students and talk about the worst things that ever happened to them. But they do it because they want the world to know and they want the world to remember. And so I light this candle in memory, but I also light it to honor those like Olga and Ed who have made it their life's work to remember. So I'm going to turn the program over first to Ed, and he's going to talk to you about his experience. and then Olga is going to talk about hers, and then we're going to leave time for any questions that you might have. Good? Good plan? Works? Okay, good. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ed Bindel.
Good morning, fellow students of history. That's what I consider every day of our lives as history. Yesterday, I was in the Adirondacks and saw beautiful, beautiful foliage and celebrated the holidays with friends in the Adirondacks. Well, it was wonderful history, but it is no history. But today we're going to be talking about history, which is not quite so wonderful. And as we said, unfortunately, our generation hasn't learned enough. And so we have to pass our stories on to your generation with the hope that you will do better. You're better. So just to show you what's going on since World War, even before the World War, on that map, all those red spots are situations that have developed: genocide, suppression of people, all kinds of atrocities that have happened. And you've heard those names. You've heard Rwanda, you've heard Darfur, you've heard Bosnia. Before your time, well, Cambodia was fairly recent. Before your time in North America, we had our own little situation in the early days when the Native Americans were certainly not treated very well. We all know that. In Manchuria and China. So all over, you can see that people have not learned. They need to learn to respect other human beings and treat them with dignity and with kindness. And if we can pass on that lesson to you, then we will have done our job. Just to move along, these are the things that I'm talking about: genocide, massacres, atrocities, and of course the Holocaust, which was such a major event that it is totally unbelievable. I can't believe how the world allowed it to happen. But that's our biggest problem. We stand by and let things happen. We don't object, we don't protest. And if we can teach you anything else, is don't be a bystander. When you see something going wrong, stand up and say something. Be an upstander instead of being a bystander. If the world had stopped Hitler in his tracks before he was able to really gather power and start the World War, you just heard 75 million people died. These are civilians dying in the bombing, soldiers dying in the field of battle, and innocents dying in various forms of concentration camps and death camps. And one of the things that always startles me is that among the 6 million that perished, 6 million Jews that perished, there were 1.5 million children. Before the war, there were 1.8 million children living in Europe, Jewish children. After the war, 300,000 people left, which means that only 1 out of 6 survived. So when I speak to a class like this, I say to myself, you know, I'm really representing 5 other people who are standing behind me. Their stories will never be told. But just think of what they might have been able to accomplish, those 1.5 million people. You know, maybe we don't have a cure for cancer today. Who knows? But we'll never know. So the idea is be an upstander. Do it today. Do it as you see things happen. Don't wait, because the ultimate price that a bystander pays, not a bystander pays, that somebody pays for bystanding, is the American cemetery in France. There's about 250 of those. And if you look at it, it's amazing. There's crosses, there's stars of David, there are half moons of Islam that I didn't see in this particular picture, and under the ground can't tell the race, the color, it doesn't matter. In a cemetery, it doesn't matter. And it's a shame that we have to wait for a cemetery for it not to matter. So keep that in mind and take that away from the lessons of today. Now, I would not be here if it wasn't for this upstander. Doesn't look like a hero, doesn't look like a heroine, but certainly is, because if it wasn't for her, then I wouldn't be standing here. She was my nanny when I was born. And let's go back to my story, which centers around her. I was born way over on the right side of the screen, a little blue dot there. It's a town called Lvov. Right now it's called Lviv, because right now it's Ukraine. Before it was Ukraine, it was part of the Soviet Union. Before it was part of the Soviet Union, when I was born, it was part of Poland. Before I was born, my grandmother was born, it was part of Austria-Hungary. It really bounced around, depending on the background of the war. But that's where I was born. My parents were not wealthy, but they were good middle class, they both worked. So when I was born, they wanted to, well, let me show you a little bit about Lvov. Not a small town. This is the Opera House and Concert Hall. Some other nice fancy buildings, which I've pictured I put up. And here is an apartment house that we lived in. On the bottom floor there, over to the left of the building, is our apartment. And that's where I was born, because in those days, a lot of people used midwives instead of going to hospitals. So my parents called it midwife, and I was born right there, without leaving my house. Nice. Both of my parents wanted to work, keep working. My mother was a lawyer. In those days, a little unusual. My father was a manager in an oil company. And so what do? They hired nannies so they could keep both keep working. And that is Yuja, 70 years ago, 78 years ago, to be exact. And that is, please speak you what's going on. Anyway, so that's us. And here's some pictures of my mother and my grandmother, who were the only ones that survived, unfortunately. And life was pretty good in those days. 1938, everything was fine. 1939 is when Hitler declared war on Poland from Germany. But at the same time, he had made a pact with the other dictator in Europe, Stalin, non-aggression pact. And Stalin, when Hitler attacked from the west, Stalin decided, wait a minute, I want a piece of this action too. So Stalin attacked the Russian troops from the east. And if you remember that map, we were very close to Russia. So we were one of the towns that was taken over by Russians in 1939. Life changed. Everything that was good wasn't nailed down. The Russians were poor people, so they shipped everything back home to Moscow, to various other cities. And we had to stand on line for food, at food stamps, food cards, ration cards, etc. Of course, I don't remember any of this. I was long ago. This is total memories that I'm telling you. And, but there was one thing that the Russians didn't do. They didn't try to kill anybody. They were not murderers. They certainly were against capitalism of any kind. And let me see, I think I don't remember it. No, I didn't. My father had to write a letter that Yuja, who is Josefa Ramos, my nanny, was not an employee, not a household employee, because household employees were a definite no-no. So that happened in 1939. We lived under that particular rule for 2 years. And we had, some things changed. We had a larger apartment. We had to give up some rooms in our apartment to house Russian soldiers. And they were nice people. I played with them, they played with me. Got drunk occasionally, and one of them shot a hole in a picture that I still have. It's sort of a memory of days past, but nothing happened to us physically until 1941. And in 1941, Hitler decided that he could not demaster Europe without defeating Russia. And at that stage of the game, he attacked and it was Holocaust was one of the first ones that came to. And at that stage of the game, they had already formulated what they called the final solution of the Jewish problem, which was murder, extermination, total genocide. And so the first thing they started doing is rounding up all the Jews. It was very easy in those days. Everybody had to have papers. On your papers, you gave your name, address, all sorts of religion. So, passports today don't have religion. Those passports did. So it was easy to find out. Not only that, the records in the town hall were very good, and easy to find Jews. So they had a three-pronged approach rounding people up. They would either put them into a ghetto, which they formed, routing thousands and thousands of people into a small area so that they had control over all of the Jewish population. The Jewish population of the boat, by the way, was about 100,000, and the town had 1 million people. So not a small town at all. And the second solution was to put them on a train and send them off to some kind of a work camp. Eventually, first was work camps, then it became concentration camps and extermination camps. That was solution number 2. Solution number 3, when there's no room in a ghetto, when there's no room in a train, well, there was a famous place, infamous place, in Lvov called Genovska, which was like a side camp out in the fields, and they would just take people out there and shoot them. No questions asked, line them up, shoot them, bury them somehow, or burn them, it didn't matter. So that was the German solution to the Jewish problem. And we got caught in the middle of it. One morning, I traveled up to work. My mother, Yuzha, stayed behind, and all of a sudden, loud banging at the door. Juden raus! Jews outside. Well, Yuzha stayed with Cluden. She's Polish, she's Catholic. And my mother's out. So my mother and I get put on a truck, and we get taken to a roundup place. And this is sort of my first real memory. I'm about 3.5 years old at the time. Sitting in my mother's arm, and a lot of people mingling around. Half the square is cordoned off. All the people that were rounded up on one side. On the other side is German officers, with staff cars, convertibles, and dogs. And everybody's milling around, nobody knows what's going on. I'm drawing, I'm not happy to be there. Neither is anybody else. Fortunately, my father hears about the fact that we had been rounded up. He goes to his management, which happens to be German. The Germans were very clever. They started buying up oil companies a long time ago because they knew that a war could not be fought without oil. Tanks and airplanes don't run without oil. So they controlled this oil company. He spoke to his manager, some bribes changed hands. The next thing that happened, we get pulled out of that roundup place. He's waiting outside Morrison's car. And that's, I call that my survival #1 developments. But very fortunate to be able to survive like that he knew the right people. So we get back to the apartment, and here we had known, anybody in the boat knew that trouble was brewing all along. So he had set up some mechanisms for rescue. And what he did was he found a farmer who lived in a farm maybe 10 to 15 miles outside town, quiet place, very little activity there, and the farmer agreed to take 2 women. I showed you the 2 women, my grandmother and my mother. Some of the other of all, 4 people, my father and myself, was too much. But second of all, he wouldn't take men. The reason why he wouldn't take men was because in those days, all the Jews in Poland were circumcised. None of the Polish people, or very few of the Polish people, were circumcised. So therefore, it was very, very easy to tell whether a man was Jewish or not. And he wasn't taking a chance. Well, the other thing that my father did was rent an apartment on the other side of town where nobody knew us, and we were going to move there. And so he asked Yusha, Annie, please take my son. I don't have any ready cash, I don't have any liquid assets, because I spent everything that I had liquid on getting you out of that roundup. So, take my son, move to that apartment, and I'll join you as soon as I can. Well, as a 3-year-old, you can imagine I'm not a very happy child. My mother leaves and says, oh, I'll see you, I hope soon. My father sends me off with my nanny. Fortunately, I had a nanny, somebody that I knew. A lot of kids went with strangers. So you can imagine the impact on a child that that must have. Just both your parents disappeared. And turned out I was very unlucky with my father because I never saw him again. He was caught in an excellent rap and there was nobody to rescued him, so he became a victim of solution number 3. He didn't even wind up in a labor camp or in the ghetto or anything like that. He was just brutally killed and murdered. So that's, and Yusha and I then lived together as mother and son for 3 years during the entire war. Every single day that she was with me, she was in danger of her life because if either one of us had been caught, it was instant death. There was no questions asked. Anybody, lots of signs around town, anybody helping a Jewish person was immediately subject to execution. No questions asked, like I said. And we had a few incidents of very close escape. This is a picture in the garden where we went on breaks, and in the garden were a lot of the other people taking breaks. Sometimes on a weekend, the Polish population was there, but they were unhappy and gray, not smiling and not laughing, and not very attractive to a 4 or 5-year-old. But there were also German soldiers and officers sitting in the park. They were happy, they didn't have any problems in this world. So, who does a 4-year-old want to play with? The sad ones or the happy ones? Well, I wanted to play with the happy ones. And Yusha's park must have been someplace up here every time I walked up to one. She couldn't tell me not to do it because that would make them suspicious. But if they got suspicious on their own, like I told you, drop your pants and figure this out. Amazing that she lasted for 3 years. She had to go to work because the money that my father had given her ran out. She couldn't take me to a doctor. Fortunately, I was a pretty healthy kid because, again, the doctor would have immediately found out that I was Jewish. So we lived like that for 3 years, like I said. And amazing woman. Talk about an upstanding. Okay, now after the war, we usually saw that the Germans started disappearing, Russian soldiers started appearing back in town because we were rescued by the soldiers, and Russians started going back to the apartment, and eventually my mother did the same thing, coming back from the village, and we met up at the apartment at a reunion, which I don't remember very well, it was 6 at the time. But still, it was quite something. After the war, my mother met another gentleman whose wife had been killed. He had a daughter, and we were able to start a family again. The Russians told us that We only had 6 months to get out of the war, staying there forever, become Russian. My mother and the gentleman that she had met did not want to, so we left. We went to DP camps, displaced person camps in Germany, of all places. And again, there was no place that would accept us. The United States had some very strict quotas. I guess we could have gone to Australia, I think. That would have been okay. They didn't want to do that. Israel was being blockaded by the Great Britain. They promised the Arabs not to let in any Jews in return no access to oil. So Germany it was, and I lived in Germany for the next 7 years of my life. And finally got here. This is some pictures from the boys of the DP camp. This is a little parade that we had to support the state of Israel. And for some reason, I was picked as the mascot with a trumpet in my hand. My stepsister is on the left, and the gentleman, the large gentleman on the right, that's my stepfather. So we all got into the picture except for my mother. And then we got to the United States. This is our first dinner, our first Passover dinner Seder in the United States. Some relatives. Again, the four of us against the wall. And then life sort of turned normal. I got married, 2 sons. This is a baby naming of my first granddaughter, and I have 2 granddaughters and 1 grandson. Actually, I have 6 granddaughters because I remarried. My wife, unfortunately, passed, lost her in 1995, but I remarried and gained 4 granddaughters. Got some granddaughters and grandcats like I can. And then there's Yuzha, who did not want to leave Poland. She didn't want to go to Germany, but she went back to her hometown. She got married, had a child, and did not have an easy life, unfortunately. I would have wished her all happiness and all goodness, but it wasn't to be. Her husband was sickly. She had all kinds of work that she had to do on both sides. And 1989 is when I got back to Poland to visit her. And she had, that's a daughter, grandson, and Yuzha, and a cat, of course. I think there was a grandson was being not treated well because his father paid more attention to a vodka bottle than to his son. But fortunately, my grandson was interested in computers and technology. I was in the computer business. I knew a little bit from my 2 boys how to play the snake and parrot game. So he was made to perform. And if he performed, he got a computer, he got started in technology, did very well. He's right now a very successful website designer in Poland, travels to Hong Kong, comes to the United States, bought his company. And so I was able to give back a little bit, and that made me feel good that I was able to return some of the good that you did for me. And I could never pay her back for what she did for me. She gave me my life. And so that felt good. We lost Yuzha at age 99 about 2 years ago. But until then, we visited her as often as we could. Took my kids over there and truly celebrated the life of a hero, Carolyn. So, thank you very much for listening. That is a summary of myself.
Thank you so much, Ed. Each story of the Holocaust is very, very different. Everyone has a unique way that they survived, a unique way that they lived. And Olga Menser is going to tell about her experiences during this period. So, everyone, Olga Menser.
Hello to everybody. And as you heard, my name is Olga Menser, and I am from Hungary, from Budapest, which is the capital of Hungary. I was a very happy child. I had an older sister, 3 years older than I was, and everything was good. I went to school, I had friends, it was fine, and then later on I became a teenager, about your age. I had even a boyfriend, and I danced, so it was a happy life. I had 2 sets of grandparents. They lived in Budapest. I used to visit them, and was everything good. But in 1944, everything changed. It was already no more fun. You see, Hungary was the last country that the Nazis, Hitler occupied. And it was, I remember, it was middle of March. The Nazis, the SS came into Hungary, came into Budapest to the railroad station. And it was a terrible, terrible Sunday. People was picked up on the street, people was picked up on the railroad station, just because they looked Jewish. From then on, everything changed. My father was called in to serve in a forced labor camp. So we was just 3 of us with my sister. And also was a big change because we had to wear a Jewish star, and our clothes did have to be sewed on, so we cannot take it off. And also we was not allowed to be out on the street at 5 o'clock. They didn't want any Jews on the street. So the time was very, very different. We was worried about my father, and then the big change came again. They were selecting Jewish houses. They called Jewish star houses. And we lived in an apartment house, and the building was not selected, one of them. So we had to look for some people where we could move in, because the people who was occupying like 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, they had to share their home with French people. So we moved in with a family, just about we had, by the time we get there, we was occupying the living room, because the other 3-bedroom was already taken. We left everything behind. We took a pillow and a blanket and some clothes, and this was very good, we was poor family living in the apartment. That was fine. As I said to you, up to 5 o'clock we were allowed to go out, but we didn't go out too much, because even you had this star, you went like outside like you're supposed to be. If they didn't like you, they would pick you up. Of course, we didn't know what's happened with these people. Later on, we did find out that was so tortured, and some never made it. Then was a person who was a Swedish diplomat. I don't know if you ever heard of it. His name was Ralph Wallenberg, and he was very good. He wanted to save the Jews. Some of the Jews what he could. So he was giving out some paper they called Schutzpass, which is actually like a protected paper or safe paper. And my mother kept one of those papers for 3 of us, and we thought that was terrific. Meantime, of course, my father was away in the camp. We had no idea. In Budapest, we had no idea what he was doing, and we was worried about it. But unfortunately, one morning, the Arrow Cross came. You see, Arrow Cross was the same thing in the Hungarian army as the SS was in the German army. They was very, very, very bad, they case for. And anyway, they came and told us, the Jewish people, to get out. And we was put in a group, and and we was taken outskirts of Budapest. Outskirts of Budapest, close to the airport, which is still the only airport in Hungary. And so my mother, of course, tell them we have the paper, we are protected, they should not take us, but of course, the Arrow Cross, the guy didn't listen, and he was taken out, and my mother showed them the paper what we had. But unfortunately, they told us our paper was false paper, was not valid because didn't have a model mark on it. So we were separated from my mother. She was taken away with my sister, we stayed behind. And we was placed in a big building, which one time was a factory, but of course had no windows because bombing was going on. It was wartime at that time. And we worked. We was taken to work and we was digging ditches every morning. And at night we went back and we slept on the concrete floor, and it was kind of a cold. We stayed there for a while. Every day was the same thing, and bombing was going on because, as I told you, the war was on. And we was there for a while, and then one day we was taken in a different direction. Instead of taking us to work, we was taken back to Budapest. We was taken to the railroad station, and there they had cattle trains, probably also pictures how they look with a little window just on the top. And we was pushed in. There was many of us, maybe 90, maybe even more. There was no even room to sit down, so we just stood. And they placed a bucket, was used as our bedroom. And we was very scared, we had no idea where we are going. And the train stopped a couple of times and somebody had to go down and empty the bucket. And we had nothing to eat, nothing to drink. Some people get very hysterical because we was all frightened. We traveled maybe 2 or 3 days, and finally the train stopped. I do remember very clearly, it was in the evening, and they unlocked the door, and we get out, and was reflector lights all over, assessment standing there with a rifle, with dogs, and they told us, Schnell. We get out, we was placed in a giant tent where we spent the night. Still nothing to eat and nothing to drink. We spent the night there, it was quite cold, we slept on the concrete floor. As I told you, it was a tent. The next morning, we was taken to a big room where we had to get undressed. And that was very difficult, not to get undressed, but standing naked in front of all the assessment. So they took away our clothes, our shoes, and they gave us that so-called uniform. Probably you saw a picture of it. It's a striped skirt, a light jacket, and they was taken away our shoes, so we had like clogs, no socks, nothing. After that, we was taken to a barrack. And there, the first time, we had a little bit of coffee, which they called coffee, it looked like dirty water, and a small piece of bread. And also that day was, like triple-decker. With my sister, we stayed on the top. We had no pillows, we had no pillows, no blanket, no nothing. We just slept on the wood. Also there, they had to put in a bucket because to use as our bedroom, because you see this camp, I forget to tell you, the camp where we actually arrived was a concentration camp. camp named Ravensbrück. And Ravensbrück, one of the biggest concentration camp in Germany, just for women. Okay, so we was now, and we was on the barack, and every morning, early in the morning, we had to stand appel. Appel is like roll calling. And the SS came and they counted us. And we stood there for many, many hours. It was one of the first ones, one of the beginning, that came to count us, so we stood there maybe 2 hours. If not, we could stay up to 4 hours. Many times when we get out, it still was the stars out. Stars was out. It was about maybe 5 o'clock, who knows, in the morning. And after we stood up there, we went back to the barack. They gave us a little coffee and a little small piece of bread. And we was taken to work. We worked in a potato field. We had to dig out potatoes, and the Germans are very exact. And they told us how to do it exactly, and had to be fast, and always assess standing, guarding us. And anybody who didn't do as fast enough, they always had the rifle, so they give them back. And this is the way we spend our days. After we came back from work, we get a little soup. They called soup. If you get from the bottom, it was a little vegetable. If you had it only from the top, it was just water. But still was something to eat. The bucket was in the camp, in the barack. When it was full, somebody had to take it out. And one time, I had to take it out with the other girl and was very full, so we spilled something and we was beaten. Not terrible, beaten, but we was beaten. The food was very little. We was worrying about now with my mother. We had no idea where she was taken, and we didn't know anything about my father. And every day was like that. And then also in Ravensbrück, you see, they didn't have a gas chamber, but they did have a crematorium, not what they call it. Not a gas chamber, but they had. Yeah, what?
Where they burn people?
Where they burn people. So we, and we saw the smoke coming out, because you see, people was there already much longer than I was, and people just was dying. And one day, some private gentlemen came into the camp, and they were selecting, we had to show our hands, and they were selecting some people. We had no idea what we were selected. But fortunately, we were selected, and we were selected because we were selected, and with my sister, so that was good, as long as we stayed together. And we had no idea for what. But anyway, we was put in a big truck, and we was taken to a city, and Freiburg am Main was the name, and there we worked in a factory. We worked in a factory that was manufacturing engines. And we stayed was no camp there. We stayed outskirts of the city. We had a little barack, and every morning we went to work, many miles till we get to the factory. There was a regular big factory that many German workers were there, but of course we had nothing to do with them, because just we was in a little corner, and had to be good. They checked if we did a good job, and checking it means, that was, I remember still how we had to do it, twisting the wires, and it was good. Then they checked it, and the light came on, and then it was not good, so the light didn't came out, and that person was punished. Now also there, you see, it wasn't so bad because they had the workers and they had regular meal in lunchtime. And after they finished their meal, we was taken to the like a dining room, and they gave us something to eat. Not too much, but still we ate something. And so was not really bad. Except, you go through, the walking and you see those beautiful houses and people in the window watching us. And of course, we thought, look at that, here we are. And there are the people who are just fine. And that time already, you see, was already in maybe January or February, and the war was coming to the end. So they didn't want, they should be freed. So one day, again, from there, instead of going to the factory to work, we was put in a group. And we was taken to other concentration camp, a smaller concentration camp. There we didn't have to say a bell. And that was the first time that I saw many girls being so skinny that the shoulder blades was sticking out. People were sick, they had typhus fever, they looked like skeleton. We had very little to eat. Once in a while we had something to eat. We stayed there for a while. Work standing, we didn't work nothing. We did work. And then, again, anybody who was able to walk, we was put in a group. And many, of course, was very sick, had to stay behind. And we was put in a group, and we started a so-called dead march. Dead march means during the day, we was walking by the highway, and anybody who could not keep up, stayed behind, it was shot. We slept, we walked during the day, we had nothing, absolutely nothing to eat, nothing. We slept on the field. It was very cold. It was April. It was cold. But you see, even with this, I never give up. I always somehow just thought that I'm gonna make it. And each morning we was getting less. Not because some people were sad, but for most of us, just there was in the morning we woke up, and people, my friends, some of them, they stayed there. They was dead. The eyes open. One of the girls who was my high school friend, and my sister one time wanted to give up. She was 3 years old, and of course she was taller, bigger than I am. Everybody's bigger than I am. And she wanted to give up. And I said to her, if she gave up, stay behind, it means she will be shot. I said to her, if you stay behind, I stay with you. I could not go home without you. You see, I always had hope that I had to see my parents. And so somehow she got enough strength or willingness and keep on walking. We walked, as I told you, by the highway, and if we saw a garbage dump, and they had like dirty potato peels, we picked up and we ate it, because there was no food and that's good. It was many days we walked. And sometimes there was not potato peel. It's hard to believe. We ate the rest, because just needed something to chew. The group was getting smaller and smaller each day. And you see the board while he was walking, on the highway, one direction, the Germans was coming already back because they pushed them back. They was losing the war. And after they walked many days, one evening, towards the evening, we was taken up in a hill. As always guarding us on both sides, and they told us to sit down. Okay, we sit down, and for 1 second I thought that maybe they're gonna we will be shot. But they didn't shut us, we fell asleep. And in the morning, when we woke up, there was no SS around us. We had no idea what's happened. We looked if they are hiding, but no SS. So here we are alive, and they didn't shoot us. So that was good. We looked down, it was up on the hill, we looked down, we saw a little village with like a picket fence. Slowly we went down and we went into the little garden and vegetable garden and picked up anything what we could, scallions, radishes, carrots, and of course we did dirt and everything we ate because we were so very, very hungry. We were starving. Then a man came out from the house and we were very scared because we had no idea where we are. And he said to us, I spoke German because in school that was the second language. And we had to learn, so he said to us, we should not be scared because the war was open and we was in Czechoslovakia. So imagine Czech Republic now. Imagine how much we walked, we ended up in Czechoslovakia. And he took us down. As I told you, the war was open, was over. It was May 6th, it was a Sunday. He took us to the city, to the town, and people were celebrating because the war was over and the American came in. So everybody was happy. And they was wonderful, those people. Wonderful, wonderful. They brought us food and we ate like crazy. And then a doctor came and he said, we should stop eating because we're gonna get sick. Because our stomach is so empty, but of course we ate anyway, we couldn't care less as long as we ate. And they were so good, they took away our clothes full with lice. You see, we couldn't wash ourselves, so we had lice all over, I mean the clothes and our hair. And took away our clothes, and they bathed us, they gave us nice clean clothes, and anyway the war was over. We stayed in a place that actually was a military barrack, and the American soldiers were there already. And they gave us a few rooms, and we slept in a bed. We had little beds to sleep, so everything was good. And as we get stronger, people were sent back. And so it was 2 or 3, and it was already our turn to go back home in Budapest. But my sister had temperature, and they told that she has typhus fever. But fortunately, she did not have typhus fever. And we was put on a train, and we was going back to Budapest. The train stopped, and we get to Budapest, and there was in the train station, you see Budapest has a number of train stations, south, east, and my sister said, let's go to somebody's house. We had no idea what we find, what's gonna be with parents, if they are alive. We didn't know nothing. But she lived close by, and we was there, and we rang the bell. Of course, in the beginning, she didn't recognize us, because even we looked probably a little bit better than before, but of course she did. And our first thing was to ask our parents. And it was a miracle. He was told that our parents are alive. You see, my father, from the working camp, was taken to Sachsenhausen concentration camp. He survived there, and he was home already. And my mother, when I remember I told you, was separated. She was taken back to Budapest for the time they had a ghetto in Budapest. And she was taken there, and she survived. Though I was told by my aunt she was so skinny because there was really no food in the ghetto. So she sent somebody, we had no telephone in Budapest at the time, and she sent somebody to tell them that we are home. So they came, and we were reunited again. So life was good. I lost my the two sets of grandparents who I loved very much. So after Budapest, so we was very, very happy. It was really a miracle. As I told you before, and I tell you again, I never lost hope and faith that I will survive, because I just had to. I was young and I wanted to be with my parents again. After the war in Budapest was communism, and we had nothing. My father lost his business, and from then on, from there we decided to go to South America. My father had relatives there, brothers. So I lived in 11 years in Uruguay, Montevideo, and in 1958 I came here in this country, and I love it here. And the last 14 years I live in New Jersey, and I love Jersey. And so life is good again. And we started to get involved with this speaking in school. You see, it's never easy. It's very difficult, because each time I speak, everything I see vividly. But I speak because it's important that you know as survivor, that you know that really happened, because some people tell you that the Holocaust didn't happen, but it did happen. And also I have a message to you, to accept each other as you are. We are more different color, different religion, different stature. Some people are small, some people are tall, but you don't need to be friends with everybody. But you need to respect and accept each other as you are, and never give up. Just I never give up. We should never give up.
Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you again. And I think our program is gonna, we have 2 minutes, right?
I don't know. Mr. Malcolm, did the bell go off?
Got to.
I think we have 2 minutes.
Right.
Yes. I think
Well,
our program was, we had less time than we had hoped, and so I don't know if we have time for any real questions, so if you want to come up at the end and ask any questions that you may have to Olga and to Ed, we'll be happy to answer them. And I want to be respectful of the time that you've given us and not go over. So I just want to leave you with a few parting words. And we're going to give your teachers a gift to each of you. It's a blue bracelet that says the words remember and tell. And I have them in my suitcase over there. I hope that you will wear them proudly. I hope that you will remember what you learned here today. And I hope that you will tell others. Go home, tell your relatives, tell the friend who wasn't able to be here today. Tell somebody what you learned here today. Because our mission is to keep the memory of this alive, so that we remember the past, but also that you will be the generation of people that stops genocide, that stops hateful behavior. And an older generation lived through it. My generation has failed to stop the tide of hateful behavior. And so we implore the next generation to love one another and be kind to one another. And in the words of the museum in Washington, the Holocaust Museum in Washington, what you do matters. It matters a lot. When you act with kindness, it matters, and when you act with hatefulness, it matters. So make good choices, be good citizens, be good students, and go forth and have beautiful, wonderful, productive lives. And thank you.